Hello, all, and welcome to Building Connections to Mental Health Support. Mayor's Office of Community Mental Health is an unprecedented citywide commitment to promote mental health for all New Yorkers. During today's training, you'll learn about the following: Mental Health 101 and the mental health spectrum. You'll also learn skills to support your own emotional well-being as well as others' emotional well-being. We'll talk about some strategies to communicate about mental health with others. And we'll go over some free mental health resources that you can utilize yourselves or that you can share with your community at large. So let's get started. We'll begin by building knowledge on mental health and the mental health spectrum. In understanding the mental health spectrum, it's important to understand that all of us have physical health in the same way that we all have mental health. And mental health is a state of well-being in which people can cope with the normal stressors of life, can work productively, and can contribute to their communities. Now, we all have mental health, and it is just the way that you cope with the everyday challenges that may come your way, the everyday stressors that may come your way. Work-related stress, traveling stress if you're from New York, and we just learn how to cope, we learn how to keep on moving throughout our day, and it doesn't really affect us as much. Now, a mental health challenge is a broader term that can recognize that we may all experience emotional distress that may be related to stress, may be related to loneliness, or even grief, and other situations or life events at that time. Now, a mental health challenge can include our last few years now here, going through the COVID pandemic and understanding and dealing with the stressors that come with that, dealing with the grieving and the losses that we may have all, or some of us may have experienced. So it creates a challenge for us, and this may create a mental health challenge where we can benefit from additional supports, maybe talking to someone. Now, a mental health diagnosis is a diagnosable condition that can negatively affect your day-to-day functioning. Now, this is a diagnosis of depression, a diagnosis of anxiety, schizophrenia, or even addictions. The important part of a mental health diagnosis is the word diagnosis. It has to be diagnosed by a mental health clinician or practitioner. And you will benefit from treatment or some sort of support dealing with the mental health diagnosis that you've been diagnosed with. Now, while all of us may not have a mental health diagnosis, we must understand that we may all go through a mental health challenge and that we all have mental health. So what are some signs and symptoms of a mental health challenge? How can you be aware if someone in your community, in your family, or yourself, that you may be going through mental health challenges? Well, there are signs that we can look out for. So here we have listed a few, and let's go over them. So if you're experiencing a fear and worry about your own health or that of your loved ones for an extended amount of time, so extreme fear, extreme worry about your own mental health, this may be a sign that a mental health challenge may be arising. If you see any changes in sleep, either sleeping too much or not sleeping at all, having a difficulty sleeping, or even eating too much or not eating at all, not much of an appetite anymore, this can also be a sign that a mental health challenge may be arising. Now, we do want to note that many of these changes could be just regular stressors in our lives, right? Changes in sleep that happens to all of us when we might be slightly stressed or anxious or going through something in our lives. What we want to emphasize is how drastic these changes are to that person's normal state or regular state, but also how long these changes last, right? Changes in sleep, if it's been more than 2 weeks and you're not sleeping well, or your child or your partner, your family member isn't sleeping at all, or maybe sleeping too much, you notice they're sleeping in for more than 12 hours a day, maybe time to ask a few more questions and make sure that they're okay. Now, if you also see folks that are isolating from others, during the pandemic, of course, that is part of our protocol. But if they're isolating to the point where they're not socializing whatsoever, not calling their friends, not calling family, not interacting whatsoever, this may be a sign. Also, increased irritability or hyperactivity, Mood swings either from one spectrum to another, very happy one moment and very, very upset the next, or worsening chronic health problems. Now, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, we all have physical health in the same way that we all have mental health. So it's very important that if our physical health is deteriorating, we also might want to check out our mental health and how are we feeling? What are we going through? How has this physical ailment or problem that has arisen, how has it affected my emotional state at this time? And also, many ways that folks cope is by increasing their alcohol, tobacco, or other drug use. So if you see an extreme increase that wasn't there before, or a drastic increase in these uses of substances, it may be a sign that mental health challenges may be arising. And once again, you want to provide support or you want to ask more questions to gauge the mental health challenge of this individual at that time. Now here, I do want to note that for today's training, we will be learning a lot on being able to see signs, warning signs of mental health, and ways to approach and speak to someone that may be having a mental health challenge. But we do want to make it very aware. We're not asking for you to become a mental health specialist, not asking for you to become a therapist or a counselor after this training. What we are asking is that you be more vigilant of someone who may be experiencing a mental health challenge and that you provide support. We can all provide support regardless of where we're at, what jobs we may have and our titles, right? We can always provide support to folks. So that is our main part. So let's begin by what is trauma? A lot of our city is dealing with trauma right now from the past 2 years, but also individual trauma, also a lot of individual experiences that folks may go through. So trauma comes from the 17th century Greek word meaning wound, meaning able to wound or have a wound. So as you see trauma can be an open wound on someone if they may not have addressed that trauma, if they may not know that they're going through a traumatic experience, it may leave an open wound on that person. Now it can be an emotional shock, an emotional state of being that is followed by a stressful event or a physical injury. Car crashes, accidents can cause traumatic effects on folks as well. Now with trauma, you want to also be aware that it can be caused by exposure to racism, violence, economic insecurity, abuse, grief, and other life events, negative life events. We also want to understand that trauma can be systemic. Trauma, as racial trauma, can be embedded into a society in ways that it can affect those that it's traumatizing, right? So in the last year, as well as the COVID pandemic, we also saw a lot of racial tension here in our country. And this may cause trauma for folks, racial trauma, where you kind of internalize those traumatic experiences and see it for yourself. So being aware that what happens in our communities, what happens around us, can affect us in a traumatic way. And trauma can trigger short-term or long-term psychological and also physical responses. For those that have gone through trauma in their past, they may relive that traumatic experience every time they hear a sound or every time they walk through a certain neighborhood, a certain community. This may bring back some short-term or even long-term responses. The person goes through trauma or has the same trauma response as the other. Although you can go through the same traumatic experience that we may need to get more help on or more support. So again, just understanding that everyone can go through their own traumatic experience in their own way. Everyone can have their own traumatic response. And as I mentioned, we may all experience different types of trauma. Trauma is not one single pathway. It can have multiple pathways. It can happen in multiple ways. So trauma can be complex, where it has long-term effects of multiple traumatic events. If you go through a car accident after going through another traumatic event, after maybe a loss of someone very significant in your life, this may have long-term effects on your person, on your individual self. Now, collective trauma, as I mentioned, is community or social exposures that can lead to a large-scale traumatic event. So as I mentioned from last year, the racial tensions that was going on around our country, a lot of community violence can also cause collective trauma for our communities. Um, I personally live in the Bronx, and we've had traumatic experiences from very traumatic fires to just gun violence in our community. And a lot of us have been affected in a traumatic way, but also in a collective way where it's a community grieving, a community going through this trauma together. Now, generational trauma is a traumatic event that can begin decades prior to the current generation. So this is decades and decades of trauma that is probably not, has never been discussed, has never been addressed, and the family just continues to kind of pass that on from one generation to one another. This is why it's so important to break that barrier, to break that cycle, and speak about trauma, speak about these things. How can we get support for ourselves, but also for our families? How can we get support for grandma that migrated so many years ago and may still be going through so many different things, right? How can we get support for our families generationally as well? And I also mentioned the racial trauma, again, mentioning last year, that mental and emotional injury that may be caused by encounters with racial bias and ethnic discrimination, racism, and hate crimes. So how can trauma show up for anyone, right? We've discussed a few ways as to how trauma or how traumatic experiences can lead to long-term or short-term effects, or short-term and long-term experiences of trauma. But how can trauma show up on someone? We spoke a little bit about signs and symptoms of mental health. But specifically with trauma, you want to be aware if someone is having trouble focusing, is having trouble kind of wrapping their heads around what they're trying to say, or trouble kind of staying on one task. It may show up in feeling that may interfere their daily functioning, excuse me, or that may become unmanageable. As I mentioned with those signs and symptoms, how is this interfering with their daily life? How drastic is it? How extreme is their daily life being affected by what they went through? Someone that may have gone through trauma may feel hopeless or helpless, that no one is able to help them, nothing will help them, and there's no hope for them out there. They may feel like they lost control. They have no control about their environment, about their surroundings. And this can increase anger and irritability. They may be also hypervigilant, where they may be extra vigilant about what's around them, who's around them, who can they trust, who can't they trust. And it may lead to PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder. It can lead to persistent negative thoughts and mood changes, chronic stress, and unhealthy eating or misuse of substance abuse or substances, excuse me. So similar to signs and symptoms, we want to see how drastic and how long these traumatic effects kind of show up. For how long do they show up? How long is this person kind of losing control and being hypervigilant? How long are they expressing, but also you can note that this person is going through chronic stress, very stressed, very anxious at many times. So just be aware of how this can show up in your community members and in your families and in yourself. So now that we've learned a little bit about the mental health spectrum, we've learned a little bit about trauma and how it may show up for folks. Now let's build some skills as to how can we help our community? How can we help our family that may be dealing or may be going through a mental health challenge? Let's find out more. So the good news is that us as a community, as people, we are very resilient, and that recovery is possible. So for most people who experience a mental health illness or a mental health issue, a mental health challenge within their lives, will recover and go on to live happy and active lives. Mental health or dealing with a mental health challenge doesn't mean that you're not able to progress in your life, doesn't mean that you have to stop everything you're doing. There is hope and there is help. There's always help and supports for you. So again, the good thing is that we can all recover. We can all go on to live happy lives as long as we get the treatment and the support that we need. Now, many individuals who experience a mental health challenge will improve with appropriate diagnoses and treatment. So again, this is appropriate diagnosis by a mental health clinician. What's going on? I understand that I'm going through this, but what treatment, what support can help me out at this time? And what you go through in your life experiences, and the way that you cope, your resilience, gives you the tools to be able to help others. When we go through our own experiences, when we go through our own challenges, our own difficult times, we create our arsenal of coping skills, right? Of ways that we can make ourselves feel better. What helped last time? What supports is out there that I know of that helped me last time? And these are tools that you can keep in your toolbox to pass on to your community members, to pass on to families. Things that you can say, this helped me out. Walking around the park helped me out, right? So small things like that that you can pass forward. And in order to support others in your community, it's important to take care of yourself first. So it's important that you maintain your connections with your friends, family members, and loved ones. It's important to stay in touch. I know that now a lot of us are isolating or staying at home, staying away from loved ones, but keep those social connections through phone calls. We became very, very big last year through Zoom, right? So using Zoom, so using FaceTime, connecting with others, reaching out to those that make a major part of your social support and your social surroundings. You want to make sure that you're taking care of yourselves as well by exercising and making sure that you're eating the right foods, right? Eating the right things, putting the right things into your body. As we mentioned, mood and physical health are linked. If your mental health is deteriorating, we're pretty sure that your physical health will also follow suit, or vice versa. So maintain your healthy habits, prioritize your sleep, your eating and eating healthy, and doing consistent physical activity and scheduling routines or staying on routines. Being structured can be grounding and can help you kind of remain afoot as to what is going on. It can help you stay in tune with your sleeping patterns, also stay in tune with your eating patterns and activities by setting a daily schedule, or by setting yourself a daily time to do things. It's good to have a routine of also setting boundaries. Many of us at this point as well, we may be a little bit stressed, maybe stretched thin. And that is because we want to help. We always want to be of help to our community members. We want to always be of service. But again, you cannot help others if you are not well yourself. You cannot pour from an empty cup, right? So make sure that you're keeping routine. Make sure that you're setting boundaries and setting a schedule. If after 6 o'clock you're no longer doing work, well, after 6 o'clock you're cutting off your work self, right? And you're letting your higher ups know. But setting boundaries where after 6 I no longer work on this. I'll work on that. After this time, I'll make sure that I'm doing this, or I'm eating at the right scheduled time that I should. So make sure to keep routines. And practicing mindfulness is one way that we can self-care. Mindfulness can help us notice our anxieties and distinguish between our reasonable fears and extra anxieties that may be produced by the mind. It'll help us be aware of our mood and our actions. Why are we acting in that way? Why were we doing this? It can also help us in focusing on the now and wondering what is happening in this moment. What is in my mind in this moment at this time? We don't focus on the past, we don't focus on the future, we just focus on the now. And it allows you to go through an experience and think about those experiences without judging those experiences, right? Without judging, why did you react in that way? Or why did that person react in that way? It helps you kind of just sit back and kind of understand, what is your body going through? What are you physically and mentally going through? And why are you reacting in that way? But without placing any judgment on yourself or on others. Now, practicing mindfulness can improve your mood and positive emotions. It can help you understand more, but also make you feel more positive about what is going on around you. It can help you decrease anxiety and also burnout, and can improve physical health outcomes. As we keep on mentioning, mental health and physical health are all related. So if you're improving your mental health by practicing mindfulness, you'll improve your physical health as well. Now we have a great resource which provides a slew of mindfulness activities that you can practice on your own and that you can share. Now we use two mindfulness approaches here. And the first is ACA or ACA. And with this strategy, you want to acknowledge what is going on right now. Acknowledge your mental state, acknowledge your mental health, acknowledge your physical health. What is going on and why am I reacting in this way? And you want to roll with it, right? So roll stands for recognize, observe, and let it go. You want to recognize what you're feeling. You want to recognize what you're going through. You want to observe those feelings. How long have I been going through this? When does this really happen? At what time do I feel this way? And then understand, okay, cause and effect. When I go through this, it makes me feel in that way. Now I recognize that. I can observe that next time. But right now, let's let it go. We're not going to judge ourselves on the way that we reacted. Now we're able to observe it, recognize it next time, and just let it go. The C stands for control, and it helps you understand that you can't control an outcome, but you can control how you respond to it. And accept. Allow yourselves to experience a negative emotion without judgment. Again, mental health has a lot of stigma surrounding it. So we first have to be graceful and gracious to ourselves. Give yourselves grace. Do not judge yourself for your reaction or your actions, but understand the experience, understand the emotion, and let go. So that is ACA. Now we also use the strategy called RAIN. And RAIN helps you recognize what is going on in the moment. It allows you to experience, and it allows the experience to be there, to live there, just as it is. So this is what's going on. This is my experience. That was my reaction. And this is what it is. This is the way I reacted. It allows you to investigate your feelings, again, with kindness and without placing judgment. And it helps you nurture with self-compassion, nurture with an understanding of yourself, but also of what helps you cope, what helps you in that moment. What tools can you take for whenever you go through another experience like this? So two strategies that are very, very useful to use, ACA and RAIN. Now we'll be speaking through about skills to promote mental health of others. We'll speak about some communication skills that you can use to talk about mental health with others, some de-escalation techniques that may work to de-escalate any situation with a community member or yourself, and ways to refer to mental health support or to a mobile crisis team. And we'll speak about that a little bit further. So we mentioned the signs and symptoms of someone that may be experiencing a mental health challenge. And I did ask you to realize how long and how drastic these changes are from this individual's normal behavior. And that can help you gauge what is going on. Something has definitely changed and that person may need support. So you want to ask yourself, again, how long has this negative emotion or feeling lasted? For yourselves, if you've been feeling this way for more than 2 weeks, that's usually a time where you should recognize, okay, I need more support at this time. Let me get the help that I need. Now, in someone else, you may see changes in their mood or changes in the way that they're acting. How long have these changes been going on? You also want to recognize how much these symptoms affect their daily lives. Are they able to still go to work and function on a daily basis? If it's a child, are they still going to school? Are they still able to go to school and be productive? Are they coming home and doing their homework? Are they coming home and being able to continue on with their normal routine? And again, how often these symptoms occur, these signs, how often do you see these signs happening? How often are they acting irritable or hypervigilant? So you want to recognize how long, how much, and how often. Now, in starting a conversation about mental health with others, now that we've understood some signs that we can kind of look out for, and some warning signs when it comes to dealing with trauma as well, how can we start these conversations? How can we help our community? Well, you want to inquire how the person is feeling, and you want to listen actively. And when you want to inquire how the person is feeling, think about how you would like to be asked, how you're feeling, right? So being very mindful of how you may come across to someone. You don't want to place any judgments, but you want to let them know that you're concerned. You want to use supportive language and also maintain a positive outlook. You want to let them know that you're there to support them, you want the best for them, and that there's help out there, that there is treatment out there and support. You don't have all the answers and you don't have to give them all the answers, but you can say, hey, I learned about these resources at a training that I took a few weeks back, and I know that there's help for you. So let's work together to get this help. Leading in, so you always, always, always want to share mental health resources and always encourage folks to get help. As I mentioned, you will have resources that you can share at the end of this training, but you want to be kind. You want to be compassionate. You want to understand that this person, again, taking that step back, understand that this person is going through something. They're going through a mental health challenge, and all they need is someone to support them and to guide them to the right help. And that could be you. Again, we want to remind you, we're not asking you to be therapists. We're not asking you to diagnose someone with a mental disorder or to even label, right? We're not clinicians, we're not practitioners, we cannot diagnose. But you can recognize if someone needs a little bit more help or even support. Now, ways that you can ask these questions, right? How can I ask someone, how are they doing? How can I ask someone about their mental health? Well, ask open-ended questions, questions that kind of leaves it up to them to answer back. How are you feeling? And if they say, well, what's going on? You can ask, has this been an issue that's happened before? Have you gone through this before? So asking questions that they understand you're there to support them, you want to know how they're doing, and you also want to gauge what's the best support for them. You also want to relate with them and help them understand that they're not the only ones going through this, right? It has been really hard for me to sit and focus lately because I've been so worried about COVID-19. So stating that we're all experiencing different challenges. They may be going through their individual challenge, but also explain, yeah, I'm also feeling this as well. I can understand why you feel this way because I'm also feeling it's hit me really hard. It's also causing me to not really focus and take time for myself. So understanding that and helping them understand that they're not here alone. You also want to understand that folks have different experiences. So you don't always want to say, yeah, I went through that as well. You don't know what they're going through individually. You don't know how they're being affected by different experiences. So acknowledging that. I can see how this would be particularly hard as a parent juggling childcare and work. So acknowledging what they're going through, their own individual experiences, and that it could be particularly a different experience for that person. And you want to practice reflexive listening. You want to practice kind of repeating back what that person has said so that they know that you are actively listening. It sounds like things have been really tough for you and that you are facing a lot of stress. Did this start after your hours were reduced at work? So if you're speaking to someone in the community and they're telling you that they've been affected by their job or they've been affected by hours that have been cut, acknowledge that. Tell them that could be difficult for them and acknowledge that you're listening to them. I heard what you say. Let me make sure I got this right. And how can I help you? How can we support you, right? You're asking them a clarifying question. Did this start after your hours were reduced at work? So you're going back to what they told you at the beginning. You're remembering and you're showing that you are listening actively to that person. In the case that someone maybe experienced a mental health crisis, a situation where they may need help at that specific moment in time, you want to see these changes in behaviors and you want to see these specific signs. So anyone acting impulsively, they may be acting reckless or even threatening in behavior. You want to be mindful of this. You also want to be mindful of anyone in the community that may be becoming combative, maybe getting progressively more agitated as time go by. They may, in in the community, you may see them shouting. They may even go out to throw things, or even banging on the doors and walls. So so progressively getting more agitated, increasing their anger. Want to be aware of these things. You also want to be aware of any psychological distress or any of those signs and symptoms we mentioned earlier. But if they're combining this with public substance use, it's one thing when folks use substances to cope while they're at home or even in social settings. But once you see that it's happening in a public setting and it's also in combination with some signs of mental distress or psychological distress, you may want to find additional support for that person at that time. Now, this could be someone sobbing loudly while they're holding a bottle to their side, or someone actively injecting themselves, and you see this within your community. This is someone in crisis, someone that needs help at that time. And also, if they're threatening to self-harm, or there are signs that they have self-harmed before, there are signs that they have started cutting themselves, or even bruises that they may be going through. You want to also notice that this is a time of crisis, and you want to provide them support at that time. Now, in a moment of crisis, if you feel safe and if you think that the situation is safe enough, you want to be able to engage with that person and use some de-escalation techniques. Some techniques that can help them de-escalate their emotions at that time so that they can be guided to care or to support. So you always want to remain calm. You always want to offer assistance and support. Let them know that you're here to help and that help is on the way. So you want to let them know everything that is happening in the moment. You don't want to surprise them with anything. You want to let them know calmly that you're there to support them. You're there because you want to help them, and help is on the way. If you've called someone, if you called a mobile crisis team, and we'll discuss that in our resources. But if you called a mobile crisis team, let them know, I've called a mobile crisis team and they're on their way. So being very, very upfront with the person. You don't want to ask too many questions, and you don't want to also correct the person's thinking. In that moment, what they're experiencing is real for them, and we should acknowledge that. While we may see it in a different way, in that moment, this person is experiencing this, and this is the way that it's showing up, or this is their thought process through this. I understand that this is the way that you feel at this time. So understanding that, never touch a person and provide them personal space. And also avoid sudden gestures. You don't want to move too quickly. You don't want to move too drastically. You don't want to scare or cause more anxiety for that person. So remain calm, stay collected, and avoid any sudden gestures or movements at that time. These are ways that you can help someone de-escalate and can help someone get to a state where they can be guided to additional support at that time. And you want to take action at that time. You also want to get them help while you're with them, while you're making sure that they're okay, while you're talking with them and saying, I'm here to support you, hope is on the way. You also want to act accordingly. So in any imminent danger, in any case that you or themselves are in danger, you want to call 911 and you want to reach EMS. But explain that this person that you're speaking about is dealing with a mental health challenge and they're in imminent danger to themselves or others and may require medical attention. So you want to let them know that they're dealing with someone with mental health so that they are aware and prepared to deal with the situation once they arrive. Now, if someone's in emotional distress, not in imminent danger, but you can tell that they are emotionally distressed and going through an emotional crisis, you will want to call again. So this is our New York City directory for mental health. And you want to ask for a mobile crisis team if you believe that someone is emotionally distressed, but not in imminent danger at that time. A mobile crisis team will be able to provide support to that person at that time and will reach that person where they're at. So you don't have to take that person anywhere. That person doesn't have to go anywhere. The mobile crisis team will come to you. So please, please Make yourself aware of this information as it could be very crucial for your community members. And again, what do you say when you call for help or when you call to request help? You want to, again, clearly state that you are calling for a mental health crisis. You're calling for someone that is dealing with a mental health challenge or crisis at this time and they need support. Make it clear so that whoever is dispatched out to deal with this situation is aware of what is going on, that this is an emotional state of mind, and this is a mental health crisis at this time. You want to be specific about where you're at, where the person is, so that responders can easily locate the individual. Where are they in your community? Where are they if you live in a building complex? Where are they located in the building complex? Are they sitting down? Are they on a bench? Where exactly are they so that we can easily locate them? You want to also take note of what the person is saying and explain that to the dispatcher or to the mobile crisis team, right? Describe exactly what the person is saying, what they're doing, and anything about their appearance that may be helpful. If you know them from the community and you remember some things about them, maybe you want to compare how they're looking now to how they were before, anything that can be helpful about their appearance, looking disheveled, holding a bottle, wearing any type of clothing that may stand out. Want to make sure to let them know this. And you may also want to include a brief description of the individual. You want to explain what is going on, what they went through, and they will let you know what the response may be at that time. Now, we do want to make it clear that depending on the situation, depending on the crisis or the challenge, the response may not be immediate. Mobile crisis teams are dispatched in the moment, but it depends on the level of urgency, but also the level of the situation and what the person is going through. So how can we connect our community to supports? What resources are out there that we can share? So when you want to connect someone to ongoing mental health support, and this is someone that may not be in crisis, but someone that you have noticed maybe going through a mental health challenge or maybe going through a traumatic experience, you want to set a time to speak with them privately. And you want to share that you are concerned. You don't want to out this person in front of everyone. You don't want to speak about this in the middle of the community or even in the middle of the complex, in the middle of the street. You want to make sure that you take this person aside and that you mention, hey, I see some changes within you. I'm just really concerned. I want to make sure that you know I'm here for you and I want to help you. Again, you want to let them know that there's care available for them and explain that you would like to make a referral or refer them to a mental health professional. So let them know you care and let them know that you'd like to guide them or you'd like to walk them over to the supports. You want to see them get better and you want to provide them support at that time. Now, again, many folks avoid mental health services or getting the mental health treatment that they need because of stigma. So you want to make sure that you let them know mental health services are confidential and effective, and share information about the types of supports that are available. We spoke about NYC Well. We spoke about the mobile crisis team. So let them know these are two resources that you know about, and this is the way that they work. We'll also share some resources later on that you can share. Let them know, I know that there's a lot of support out there. We can find the right support for you. And you always want to assure them that you're always there for them. You will continue to be there for them. Folks a lot of times feel that people ask questions just to kind of be in the moment and just to kind of ask, like, especially here in New York, hey, how you doing? Okay, thank you, bye, right? Keep it moving. Make sure that that person knows that you're there and that you care. You want to continue to be there and you want to continue to find them support. If one thing doesn't work, you're still there for them. If that's what you would like to do. Always, always understanding your own boundaries, always, always understanding your own physical and mental state. So if you're not physically and mentally healthy enough to support another person, then make sure you guide them to a support or to someone or an additional support that can provide that continuous support, right? You can't fill up from an empty cup. So what are all these resources, right? We have a lot of information here on the page. So if you'd like to take a screenshot of it, so you can always have it on your phone, that would be great. But these are resources that are available for anyone, everyone, and they're available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So these are free and confidential resources. Now, as mentioned, we have a lot of information on our websites and a lot of guides and toolkits and ways that we can support our communities and ourselves. So we spoke about some ways to communicate with others about mental health. Now, outside of all of our city agency resources and supports, we also want to let you know that there is additional support out there that's offered 24/7 and when needed. And you can also dial 311 to receive any additional information about these resources. So there's services for homeless community. Homestat offers 24/7, 365 days street outreach for individuals that may be unsheltered and homeless. They go out and do street outreach and provide any support to someone that may be homeless in your community. In regards to domestic and gender-based violence, family justice centers provide free and confidential assistance for victims and survivors of domestic and gender-based violence. There is at least one family justice center in each borough. So please, again, you can dial 311 and ask for family justice centers to be provided a list of where you can go. Now, for our aging adults and seniors, Adult Protective Services Program provides services for physically and/or mentally impaired adults. They provide services, also support, and also provide ongoing care. So you can dial 311 to ask for this. And our elderly crime victims resource centers, which helps older victims of crime committed by strangers, and this crime can include financial crimes, physical crimes, emotional, and include neglect. So if you have anyone in your communities that may benefit from any of these resources, please let them know they can dial 311, ask for these specific resources, and they will be connected. Now we want to discuss a few case studies so that we can see how all these signs and symptoms kind of come up in a real life situation, but also in what ways can we react in these real life situations. Now I'll leave a pause after every one of these case studies so that you can just allow yourself to kind of think through what would be your next steps and how you would follow through with this. Make sure that if you also want to hold discussions amongst yourselves, pause right after I read the scenarios and you will be able to just discuss among yourselves what you can do. Let's get started. Peter is a high school student who in the past was outgoing and energetic. He took pride in his appearance, participated in sports, and had been active in the Youth Leadership Council. Now, recently, he has seemed moody and has no interest in hanging out with his peers. You notice that he no longer seems to take interest in his appearance. And now, instead of hanging out with his friends, Peter can be seen sitting alone and looking at his phone. Now, one day, you find Peter sitting alone in the community center with his head on the table. When you try to talk with him, he seems disoriented and begins to tell you that he feels hopeless and he wants to disappear. Before you can take Peter to a private space to speak further, he yells, "Why are you picking on me? Leave me alone," and throws his water bottle in your direction. Peter begins to hold his head in his hands and cry. Now, what can you do to support Peter at this time? So at this time, you may want to speak with Peter and reassure him that you're there because you care. You want to let him know, I'm here for you. Whenever you're ready to speak, I am ready and prepared. I'm just here to support you. I'm here because I want to help you. But let's find some support for you in this moment. Now you also want to make sure that you're not in imminent danger. Peter just threw a water bottle in your direction. So make sure that you're taking all safety protocols for yourself, that you're ensuring that your safety is not at risk, and then provide that support to Peter. And always, always, always make that connection. With that being said, we want to thank you for going over the scenarios. We just wanted to provide some context as to what you may see in the community and how you may react, what ways you can react, and kind of start thinking about your own ways of providing support when it comes to mental health. Again, we always want to encourage you to take care of yourselves first before you offer support to anyone else. But make sure that you also know what resources are out there that you can also utilize, or that you can also share with your community. As mentioned, we have a lot of more supports on our website. So please feel free to visit our site. You can also visit mentalhealthforall.nyc.gov to be provided more information. You can follow us at Twitter at Mental Health NYC to find out more updates on our office and more updates on what resources are available. Thank you all, and I hope you have a great day. All the best.